And we are live. Good morning. Welcome to Food Safety Chat. Jose, how are you today, sir?
I'm very well. And you, Brian?
Doing well, doing well. Beautiful weather here in Colorado. It was in the mid 70s yesterday. It's still going to be nice today. Maybe a bit of snow over the weekend in the mountains. They've changed the forecast, so not too bad here down in the on the plains next to the mountains. So that's all good.
So today we are almost close to the freezing point in Florida because it was
Wow.
72 this morning. 70 is freezing point.
That's right. You don't have a sweater on. You should be wearing a sweater.
Well, thanks God, I'm at home and I have my heating unit on, so the house is maintained at about 75 or 80.
How funny. Oh man. So what Jose, this is our fourth episode now. What Jose and I are doing. So I guess first off, hello. My name is Bryan Armentrout. I am the founder of the Food Safety Foundation and the Food Leadership Group based in Colorado. And my good friend here, Jose Sabal, is the owner of Jose Sabal Consulting down in sunny Florida. And we specialize in helping companies with FDA, food safety and quality systems and things like that. And so we wanted to start a chat to kind of talk with people about issues that we're seeing out there and to help educate and teach people around these things. But also, and this is an important thing, we had a good comment last week from a friend of mine who said, don't do a webinar. Let's interact and talk more. So definitely we're gonna give that a try here this time and talk more. So on that side, please, in the comments, so Jose and I can see your comments here on this live stream. So we're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So please put your comments in and let us know where you're calling from. I think last week we had somebody who was on the line who was watching our live stream from Tunisia, believe it or not. So that was pretty cool. So we like to start this with a nice sip of your favorite drink. So I have my coffee here.
Oh, yes, and I have my tea here.
In your pretty cup. Beautiful. We'll take our drink.
Oh, yes.
Ah, wonderful. Very good on a nice morning here in Colorado. Now we have a guest here in the studio as well, too. You can see behind me over my shoulder in the bed there. That's Lenny. Lenny's joined us. My Yorkshire Terrier likes to sit on my bed, and he's on my desk, and he's joined us here today. So that's kind of hilarious. So with this, I mean, today I wanted to talk about with you, Jose, something that comes up every now and then. I think before we get into the details on this too, is this is a good example of if you're in a position that deals with food safety and these type of things in the company, well, number one, you deal a lot with lawyers and the legal side of things. And you have to, a lot of times, manage up in the organization. So I was VP of quality at several different companies, and you have to work with the VP of operations and the head of procurement and R&D and marketing and these guys and the CEO and teach them about food safety and do it in a way that doesn't make their eyes go, oh, right, and they gloss over. They have to understand these things.
Yeah, that is correct. And kind of an introduction, Brian, to our topic today. I'm going to start saying, guys, that remember that Brian and I, we're not lawyers, we're not attorneys, we are not, we're not going to give you a legal, perfectly legal perspective of, how these things are. That's the reason why you can consult lawyers.
Yeah.
But, we can give you our opinion based on our experience. Right,
Exactly.
Brian?
Exactly. And good morning, Cecilia. Thank you for joining us. Seattle, hopefully the weather's nice up in Seattle. And you're absolutely right relative to that point, but it has such a huge impact on how we do our jobs.
Yeah. So I will say, Brian, that we should start by understanding what is written in the law.
Yeah.
And for that, again, I'm going to cite 21 United States Code, section 331, which says, guys, all of these things right here are prohibited acts. And we need to understand that the food law in the United States carry criminal consequences.
Mhm.
Okay, so everything that is prohibited in the law, well, is prohibited. And if someone does that, whatever is, goes against whatever is written there, is a criminal activity.
Yeah.
So some of the things that you will see there are, for example, that it is prohibited to receive a product that is adulterated or misbranded. It is prohibited to work under insanitary conditions. And then it is prohibited to ship any product that is adulterated or misbranded. So, with
Yep.
that, if you wish, you can start talking about your experience with the Park Doctrine.
Exactly. And one other quick point on that. So all of these legal things and what we're talking about with we're not lawyers and stuff like this, but we have access to very good food lawyers. Now, your lawyer in your company, so let's say that you have a legal officer who's on your board in your company. That's great. I mean, he probably understands all of the things he needs to do around like mergers and acquisitions and all the legal things that a company may need to do. But does he understand food law? That's very different, right? So what you're talking
Mm.
about is very, very specialized. So there's some very good law firms out there. So Hogan Lovells has a great office. There's other lawyers that we know, the Food Industry Council, who understand food law. Right now, you don't have to hire these people. You just keep them on retainer, or they bill you if you ask questions or things like that. But if something happens, you need to have that relationship. I've worked with Martin Hahn at Hogan and Lovells for over 20 years, and Martin is amazing. Miley Hermida in that office. They know food law, and if something happens around what we're talking about with adulteration or misbranding, and FDA is throwing these things around, you need to have a relationship with these food lawyers before those things happen.
And actually, I remember now, now that you're explaining that, something came up to my mind when in SQF and most likely any of the GFSI standards, Brian. One of the things that is one of the requirements is that you have legal counsel as part of your contact list for emergency cases.
You're absolutely right. That's a good point. That's a very good point. So we have Sam on the line as well. I'm sorry if I messed up your name, in Indiana. Welcome this morning. So as we're saying here, as we kind of go over our topic for today, guys, throw your questions in. Last time we kind of kept the questions till the end. We're going to address questions right as they come up. So Jose's got his iPad off to the side where he can kind of review this stuff. So we want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you're live and watching this, please do that. So to your point, this leads into the topic for today on the legal side, which is the Park Doctrine. And if you don't know what the Park Doctrine is and you work in food safety, you need to understand this. It's very important to what we do.
So what I know, and again, I'm going to repeat again that we're not lawyers, but we can read. So in this case, it was that what Brian, 1975, is that right?
Yes. So yes, the actual, I'll run through the case. So in 1971, so a gentleman named John Park was the head of the Acme grocery chain. So a large chain on the East Coast, like 800, 900 stores. And they also had around 16 distribution centers. And he was the CEO of this company. And FDA went in and did an inspection. It was a long inspection. They were there for 12 days doing an inspection of one of their warehouses. And they found some evidence of rodent activity. So there was some pellets and these type of things. No damage to any food or anything that they could actually see. But hey, there's rodents around here. That's bad. So back to your point on infestation and other things that FDA is looking for when they do an inspection. And they wrote up a Form 483. So for people on the call who don't know, the 483 is a form FDA fills out when they find things they don't like. It's not as bad as a warning letter, but hey, here's things that you've got to fix. This was addressed to John Park, the CEO of the company, as they always are. The most responsible person gets that notification. So they were notified of insanitary, right, legal term, insanitary conditions in their distribution center. And with that, they said, hey, you got to fix this and clean it up. So Mr. Park said, fine, whatever, we'll fix that. And he let his team know. So he went to the operations guy and said, hey, clean up your warehouse. The guy said, okay, fine. And he went to the head of the warehouse and said, clean your warehouse. FDA wrote these things up and we can't have that happening. FDA came back, did a re-inspection, and they said, it's better, but it's not good enough. We're still finding things going on here that you guys didn't fix. We are going to charge you with a misdemeanor. So they actually charged John Park. And he's like, what? This is nuts. Why are you charging me with this? I told my people to fix this. I assumed that they'd fixed it. You can't charge me for this. And they said, oh yeah, we can. So they went to court. And he said, I did everything that I was supposed to do. I delegated to my team. My team didn't do a good enough job. Not my fault. Court case said, nope, your fault. You are guilty. And this eventually ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court, there's some different things in between that happened, but with that, the Supreme Court said, no, you are the ultimate person responsible. And even if you don't know, you are held liable for that. Huge court case. It happened then in 1975. And with that then, it really didn't do a whole lot, right? FDA very rarely pulled that out, Jose. So that's kind of the history of the Park Doctrine. It's also called, the most responsible doctrine, saying that the most responsible person in the facility or in the company is ultimately responsible for these activities. So go ahead.
I remember reading, Bryan, a PowerPoint presentation by Bill Marler, which is another food lawyer. And in that presentation, he was explaining the Park Doctrine, and he was also in one of the slides, I can see something that he mentioned that is called the strict product liability.
Yes.
So in the United States, whomever is the most responsible person in a company is responsible for the products that they are making. And most likely that's what the judge read and understood, and that's how the sentence achieved that result that ended up that way.
Yep. Yeah. And so, Francisco in the comments here is putting, the actual law case in the case USB Park. Absolutely right. Thank you for those reference materials for everybody so you can look that up. And to your point, if someone can explain this in the comments better than we can, I'd like to hear it too. But strict liability is an important thing in this. Strict liability means that you just have to be aware. The prosecutor does not have to prove criminal intent on your part or liability. Their bar, so with that strict liability, the bar for what the prosecutors now under the Park Doctrine needed to prove got lowered way, way down. So all they needed to do is say, did Mr. Park know about the issue in the warehouse? Yes, he did. Did Mr. Park have the ability as the CEO of the company to provide the resources and actually get it fixed? Yes, he did. Did he fail to act and get that done? Yes, he did. That's it. That's all they have to prove.
Yes.
So no criminal intent. He wasn't trying to do anything wrong. He just didn't follow up on it. And that's what he was convicted of under the Park Doctrine. So FDA uses this now, right? So this was 1975. What's that got to do with now? I mean, old law. FDA dusted it off and said, now that we've got the Food Safety Modernization Act, we've got some new powers and authority on what we can do. Before we could ask companies to recall, now we can make them. Now, in reality, companies always would, very rare exceptions, one or two maybe, where companies would refuse to recall. If FDA asked you to recall, I know in quality, in my world, you recalled, right? There was no question on that.
Yeah.
But the FDA now has the teeth to do that as well, to make you recall. And FDA will use the Park Doctrine now if you fail to follow through on these activities, and you have a serious issue. So people are saying, why is FDA doing this, right? Well, they've partnered with the Department of Justice for the prosecution side of this. So it's been very interesting how this partnership has developed. So they've created some standards around this where it has to be a serious case, right? So they're looking at human illness and really serious issues. So Peanut Corporation of America and Jensen Farms and Bluebell Ice Cream, which is going on right now in Texas with the CEO, Mr. Cruz. So there's been lots of court wrangling around that as well. Now,
you know what is and sorry to interrupt you, Bryan, but you know what is very unique now, that when the FDA developed the preventive control for human and animal food, one of the things that is written in the subparts for keeping the documentation is that the person that is responsible for signing the food safety plan before its original implementation, and then after each change or modification, is the top of the company, whomever is that person, the general manager, the owner, the president, or whatever it is. That's a person that will sign the food safety plan.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So this then kind of brings up an interesting point, something I see quite a bit in companies relative to this. So if FDA chooses with the Department of Justice to institute a criminal investigation under this, right? First, you have to be convicted of a misdemeanor, then the criminal investigation can take place. The first thing they do is subpoena your emails and your documentation. And they go back years. So Chipotle happened in 2015. When DOJ went after Chipotle, they subpoenaed all the records and emails back to 2013. So I'm kind of curious. So for people who are watching this live in our stream, how many people have a really robust document control and retention program in place where that sets limits on how long you retain your documents, including emails? Who has that? I'm curious. Let us know in the comments.
Oh my God, I have not seen that.
Yeah. So right now in the Bluebell situation, they subpoenaed the emails, and there's lots of emails from Mr. Cruz going back and forth with different people in the company. So that they're going after him on conspiracy and wire fraud, not what you would think, right? Hey, you put listeria in ice cream. You produced product that was adulterated. Nope, that's not what. They're going after what he said in the emails. So he told in these emails, for example, and again, this is my summary of all of this, right? I'm not a lawyer, is that he would email his salespeople and say, hey, we're having an issue. Go in and get the product off the shelves and don't tell the retailer what's going on. Just remove the product. Things like that. So they're using those emails as evidence that he knew what was going on and failed to act.
Yeah.
So,
and that is enough based on Park Doctrine.
Right. And I don't know about you, but me, right? I keep my emails forever. Most people do, right? We have unlimited storage capacity on our computers now, right? Terabytes of information we can store. And people, those emails, right? They want to hold those emails forever. But in reality, when you think about it, when's the last time you actually went back and needed an email from 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, last month? When do you ever actually go back and look at old emails? It doesn't happen very often.
Not very often. I agree with you.
Right. And companies need to, in their document retention programs, to your point, right? This is something then like under the GFSI standards, SQF under 2.2, you need to be having a document and record retention program in place. And that means keeping records for a certain period of time, but then destroying older email. And if you have it in place and you don't follow it, the lawyers will say, no, it doesn't apply because you didn't actually execute against it.
Yeah. Good point. Very good point. So I remember, now that you mentioned that, I remember that I read the actual indictment in the case of the Peanut Corporation of America. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing, but in that document, I remember seeing a quote from an email from the owner of the company telling the quality control people, I guess, I don't recall exactly, Bryan, but telling the quality control people, hey guys, release this product right away because we're losing a lot of money and blah 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 and so on. And there was evidence that the product contains salmonella.
Right, exactly. Rodney made a comment here. Rarely go back to emails in the past. Interesting point to include emails in the retention program. Never thought of that. Thanks for sharing. Thanks. I mean, it's a huge thing, right? And it's really important. And when you start talking in your company about including in that, oh, that's going to be a firestorm, right? So you need to have, right? You need to have senior level support on that. And people in the company need to be trained, Jose. They need to know everything you put in an email could potentially be in court. So if I'm sending you an email, right, and I'm typing, right, I'm sending you an email. I'm like, hey, Jose, I'm out here in the plants. I'm the quality manager, and I'm seeing some stuff out here, and this is really bad. And I think the company's doing a bad job, and I think they're covering things up. Oh, right. Now imagine Bill Marler with that email in his hands in court, holding that up. Right?
Done.
Right. That's why, as part of your crisis management training, when you're doing these things, right, you need to communicate via conference. And do not communicate these type of things when you're in a crisis situation via email. Side point, but super, super important. Email is not private. Not private.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, the Office of Criminal Investigations of the FDA is how any of these investigations start. Mm-hmm. And to my surprise, when I was getting, reading and seeing what's going on with the Peanut Corporation of America case, mm-hmm. I learned something quite interesting. And I may not have all the precise facts, Brian, but as long as I understand, these guys were audited privately. It was a certification scheme. And then the FDA went in. And the FDA started an investigation because they saw a lot of violations. Mm-hmm. And when the investigations came through and they started doing all the things, they kind of, I'm going to say, upgraded that investigation to a very serious case. And that's when the Office of Criminal Investigations of the FDA kicked in. They start searching and finding and looking for information and so on. And guess what? I believe that at some point it was too much for them. And they called the FBI. And the FBI was the one that actually took the case and continued working with that case. Exactly. So because of that, Brian, I remember that in September of 2015, when the FDA was already publishing the preventive controls rules, I remember reading I'm going to say a letter, a statement published by, released by Sally Yates, which at that point was the Attorney General of the United States, telling all the attorney generals of each of the states that whenever there is an investigation in a food facility, fine. They need to go after the company, make sure they pay for the fines, civil fines, and so on. But they want to make sure that they prosecute whomever is the person that is the most responsible person at that facility, personally. Right. They want to make an example of them. Yep. Right. And in the corporation, so Francisco noted on here as well, right, that in the PCA, Peanut Corporation of America issue, they fabricated COAs, right? So Stuart Parnell, the head of the company, the CEO, told the QA manager to do things that she shouldn't have done, and they did them, right? And so they fabricated COAs, false information, lied to investigators when they came in. She served jail time too. And I think she just recently got out. Well, if I remember correctly, the owner was sentenced to 28 years, his brother for 20, and then I guess it was the operations manager and the plant manager, they got 5 years each of those, and the quality control lady, 3 years. Yep. She certainly did. So, I mean, so part of this is, right, and in companies,
is all of this is extremely important information that as food safety people we need to understand. But the important thing is teaching people in the organization why it's important and why it applies to them. Because a lot of time there's kind of the view of, well, that won't happen to us. Really, right? All of these companies that we're talking about didn't think it would happen to them either. Do you remember the issue with Jensen Farms here in Colorado? They were prosecuted under this. So Counsel, and they changed their processing equipment, and they thought it was actually better. They thought they were going to do a better job of cleaning the outside of the cantaloupes and washing them. It actually made things worse, and they had listeria on the outside of the cantaloupe. And let's see, so there were some notes here near this. So 33 individuals had illnesses, death of 33 individuals, and illnesses 147 people. So even though Eric and Ryan Jensen didn't know they were contaminated and didn't know that the conveyor system would increase the risk, prosecutors still brought charges and argued that they failed to take appropriate steps, right? And let's see, so I mean, they ended up with, they pled guilty to misdemeanors and had 5 years of probation and 6 months of home detention, right? That was a huge issue here in Colorado.
Yeah, and you know what, Brian? Let's I will say that for a second, let's try to implement a corrective action for this. So as part of our corrective actions, we are supposed to look for the root cause. So what is the root cause? Why this is happening? Why the owners of a food facility, are not aware of the legal and regulatory requirement of manufacturing food?
Right. Well, I
Because
think
most likely, I will say that most likely, and I'm not sure about the PCA gentleman, because he worked. This is what I know. He worked in Washington and related with Congress and laws and whatever. But the Jensen brothers, I mean, they may not be related with any kind of a legal thing, but it will be good to have some legal background before you start doing business in the food industry. You need to understand that at some point it is possible that you may kill people.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think part of it, Jose, is, and I'd be curious in the comments here, if people have ideas on how you did this in your company. How did you actually talk with your CEO about these things? Because part of it too, Jose, is, remember, a lot of times the CEO of companies, they come from the sales teams or the marketing teams or financial or things like this. Very, very rarely is it somebody from quality or
production,
right? So they don't know. And if you're the CEO of a company, right, you have a very definitive view of what it is that you do. And it's around growing value for your shareholders and mergers and acquisitions and the finances and these type of things of the company. You're not thinking about this. You're assuming that, okay, I'm the quality guy. The quality guy is taking care of that. What they need to understand is what we're talking about here today is no. If there's a failure, even if you don't know about it, they're coming after you personally.
Yep.
So you need to educate them. And that can become a very powerful tool.
You remember that what was that, 500 million eggs that were recalled?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that one?
Yep, quality eggs. Yeah.
So I'm not 100% sure on what I'm going to say, but I believe that the owner, which is never present at the farms, and his son, they both were to jail for, I believe it was 3 months.
Yeah, DeCosters, yes. Mm-hmm. So let's see here. So we have here's a comment here from a LinkedIn user. Let's see, how can we change the culture of organization towards food safety when the CEO of the organization herself or himself is not fully interested? And three question marks, right? Because that's important. And it's what we're talking about here. And this is why we thought it was so important to talk about the Park Doctrine. There's a phrase in the company when I'm talking with senior leadership that always makes me really sends off alarm bells, Jose. So if I'm talking about these things and that person will say it's the CEO and I'm explaining this and that CEO says, you know, Bryan, I don't know, we've never had a problem before. Right?
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have one in the future.
Exactly. So what they're telling me is you're relying on past luck to equal future luck. That's very, very, very dangerous, right? Just because you haven't had an issue doesn't mean that you're prepared for one. You may have just been lucky, right? And really using these examples to teach them. So fortunately with FSMA, right, this is something that's good for us, is with FSMA and with the Park Doctrine and these tools, regulatory agencies are being very, very clear, right? Senior person in the company is responsible, right? So again, so for the LinkedIn user, you have to, and this is what we see with Frank Giannis at FDA, with building, you know, your era of new food safety, is we have to be advocates within the company for this. This is no longer just our job. It was never our job, but we need to teach people that it's everyone's responsibility. And the government is saying, even if you don't know that it's your responsibility under strict liability, we are going to show you that it's yours, and you do not want to be in that position.
Yeah, and again, going back to that topic that I was mentioning a few minutes ago, Bryan, how do you prevent this from happening again? Let's say that we're going to use a systems approach, okay? And we need to identify the root cause, and then we need to do something to prevent this from happening again. I will say that, you know, I mean, solutions, I mean, you can find hundreds of different solutions. One, I mean, many of those will be easier. Some of those are going to be very difficult and whatever it is. But look at this. If it's me, I will say, well, you know what? Let's say that I'm the FDA. I may say as an option, well, every time that a new company is going to open up doors for food safety, the owner, whomever is going to be responsible for that facility, is going through a brief presentation of the laws and the regulation, a brief training. And that person is going to sign a paper saying, yes, I'm aware that I took this training and I know that I'm going to be the most responsible person for whatever happened at this facility, no matter if it's my responsibility or not. That could be one approach.
Yeah, I like it.
Now,
I like it.
Now look at this one, Bryan. A different approach will be, and I'm using that because it's what's happening right now. The FDA says that under the new area of smart food safety, there is a requirement to develop and implement a food safety culture. And that food safety culture must come from the top down. So hopefully, assuming that this is properly approached, hopefully senior management, I'm going to say top management, the owners, the vice president, the directors, and so on, are going to be more or less more, I'm going to say, inclined to try to learn a little bit about all of these requirements in order to prevent getting into this problem.
Absolutely. And so let's see what other questions we have here. So Nancy was asking, was the manufacturer of the food line held responsible at all? I remember the Jensen Farm incident. So the food line, I'm not quite which food line she's talking about here. Maybe PCA? Not quite sure.
So ask her to add more information to her comments.
Let us know a little bit more about what you're looking at. Park Doctrine used for all FDA programs, not just food. Absolutely, yes. This applies in the pharma world as well, and they do use it there. Let's see. Perks and benefits remain only for higher management and nothing for lower hierarchy. This will lead for poor communication towards job. Oh, yeah, that's true. I mean, so part of this is getting around this. We never had a problem before, and it's not my job, right? So the companies that we've been talking about probably felt exactly the same way, right? So Jensen's Farms, the Costers at Quality Egg, Peanut Corporation of America, right? That's the poster child right there. And everything that's going on right now with Bluebell ice cream. Huge issue with Bluebell ice cream, right? And definitely if you're not watching, this is something I follow really closely, is the Bluebell case with Mr. Cruz. And there have been lots of court issues back and forth, and I post those on LinkedIn when I see those. But it's been very interesting seeing the wranglings around that. But senior leadership needs to understand that this is not some abstract thing that is theoretical. There are actual cases, Chipotle as well, right? Actual cases where FDA and the Department of Justice are going after people. And if you fail to this level and cause illness, they're going after you. And with the environmental testing programs and swabathons and all these things where FDA is going in, if there is an issue, they're now going back to their databases under PulseNet and SIFSAN and these type of things where they have over 1 million samples now. And if there were past issues of illnesses and they can link it back to your plant, guess what? They're going after those too.
The whole genome sequencing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the best tool.
Yep. Good. Well, let's see here. So Karen's asking, how do you balance quality needs with the bottom line, right? So we do a whole show on that, right? Part of this is showing that quality is not a cost, right? Quality is the organization. You cannot afford.
Quality is a huge investment, Bryan.
Right. It's like, do you have car insurance? I have car insurance, right? Is car insurance a cost? Yeah. But if something happens, boy, am I glad it's there. And every one of these companies that goes through one of these major issues, boy, do they thank God if they have the right programs and systems in place to protect them. Because if they don't and they fail catastrophically, like these companies did, they're done, right?
Yeah.
You're out of business. There is no revenue. And under the Park Doctrine, you may be going to jail.
Yep. Actually, I can see that Luis Chavarria is writing that the Park Doctrine used for all FDA programs is not just for food. And of course, it's like that. Why? Because that Park Doctrine is coming from the, oh my goodness, that term that we use for the responsibility for the product manufacturer, the strict product liability. So it's not just food, it's everything that is manufactured.
Definitely. Let's see what other questions we got going here. So Rodney said great discussion. Thanks. He had to leave, so it was awesome that he could sit in with us here this morning. Nancy talking about the cantaloupe, and they were doing some things there. Good feedback. So we're up here on time flies, 37 minutes. So we're keeping these around 40 minutes or so. So I mean, kind of in closing, if people have other questions after the broadcast ends, we'll kind of be on the line as well too. We can ask some additional questions as well. So a couple emails here, right? Jose and I, right, we love talking about this stuff. So here's Jose's email. So jose.sabal at Sabal FSC, Food Safety Consultants, right, .com. So that's his email. And let's see, I can only put these up for one at a time, unfortunately. So, and then here's my email. So B Harmontrout at foodsafetyfoundation.com. And you can reach us out there. And let me throw these cool things up here too. We also have our little QR codes, which are cool. So you can scan this code, and this will take you to, it doesn't say which one's which, so I'm not sure. So this is either your website or my site.
That's fine, Bryan.
Well, then here's the other version then too, right? So then here's the other one that takes us to one of those two. I have to figure that out here next time. That's what's kind of fun about these. That's what's kind of fun about these talks, right? Is what happens, right? This is fun, and we enjoy this. And food safety only gets better if we collaborate and work together on these things. Right? This information is not something that you squirrel away and keep in your company, because if your competitor has a recall, that damages you too, right?
Yes.
So if you're a cantaloupe farmer and the Jensen's farm issue, that tars you as well. You could have the best programs in the world, but the consumer is going to look at you the same. And we're in the grocery store and they may say, ooh, I'm not going to eat cantaloupe anymore. Those have listeria, right? It impacts us all.
Yeah. And actually, to your point, I remember a few years ago, someone indicating that a product from a country was affected by some pathogen, microbiological pathogen, and they called the country, and they did not call exactly what was the company. And I wrote an email to that lady saying, well, you know what, that is not that fair, because you're affecting the entire production of a country when only one company is the one that is doing something wrong.
Exactly.
But well, it is what it is.
Yep, that's true. Well, thanks again, everybody. So Jose and I are doing this every Friday, schedule permitting. So far, everything's been going great. So we'll be able to do this at least through December. But of course, holidays and everything else going on. That's how that works. But next Friday, we'll be here again as well. So the day after Turkey Day. So hopefully everybody can get together with their families. It looks like mine's not going to be able to get together here in Colorado. So that's kind of a bummer. I don't know about yours.
Good deal.
Yeah. So thanks again, everybody, for your questions and everything else. Hopefully, let us know too if you like more of this interactive format. Jose, I think I enjoyed it. This was great, right? It's
good. I believe that this is great.
So I think we'll keep doing this. So thanks everybody again. Signing off here. So Bryan in Colorado and Jose in Florida. Thanks again, and have a good weekend, everybody.
Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.